I'm Stephanina, and after amputation, I went to a rehabilitation center, but not all amputees do. Why is that? What are the pros and cons? How long did I stay and what was my experience like? Let's start with the pros. When you're in rehab, the main thing you have to worry about is getting better. You're not worrying about trying to do the laundry, wash the dishes, or take care of the dog. All of the essentials are taken care of for you. Meals are provided. That's my room number. As are your medications and transportation to appointments. The environment itself is far more adaptive than the average home, and you have round-the-clock access to medical care. If you need help, then all you have to do is push the call button, and an RN or CNA will appear like a genie out of a bottle. It's also a lot easier to communicate with doctors, and the rehab center can do a lot of the back and forth communicating for you. The other big pro is therapy. I had 3 to 4 sessions of physical and occupational therapy per day. And while yes, you can get therapists to come to your home after major surgery, they can't exactly pack a stair stepper in their car and haul it over. The rehab center's gym had all sorts of equipment that I wouldn't have had access to at home visits.
Just don't kick the bar.
My leg's too short. There was even a mock kitchen where the sweetest occupational therapist in the world made cookies with me, because her job was to make sure I could cook and take care of myself when I got home. I should probably add a disclaimer that if you go to rehab, there's no guarantee you'll get to make cookies. And also that I'm not giving out medical advice, just sharing my experience. Back to the cookies. Everyone from the cookie making OT to my team of physical therapists was so supportive.
Perfect.
I also really bonded with several of the nurses, particularly the night shift nurses. About a week post-amputation, my phantom pain began and got really intense, especially at night. I have a dedicated video just to that part of recovery if you're interested. Medication didn't really put a dent in the phantom pain, though the nurses did everything they could to help. Mostly, it just helped not being alone. If I'd been at home, yes, my husband would have been there, but he still needed to get some sleep because he was working all day, taking care of the kids, the house, and all of that. If he then had to stay up all night with me every night, he would have turned into a sleep-deprived zombie. Not a pretty sight. By contrast, presumably the night nurses had slept during the day and were ready to be up all night.
It's nearly midnight, 7 days post-op.
Hanging out with me wasn't going to zombify them. So in the middle of the night when I was in pain,
Oh boy.
I would get my wheelchair and roll out to the nurses' station and get to know them. It distracted and encouraged me. I felt like I had a whole team of people cheering me on. Everyone from the nurses to the therapist to the cleaning lady were rooting for me.
You know something? That's a lot of hugs.
By the time I left a few weeks later, we were buddies. Before moving on to the cons, let's quickly sum up the pros. Daily necessities are taken care of, such as meals, room service, and laundry. Medical needs were more easily addressed. Transportation to appointments was provided. The environment was accessible and easier to function in. There were frequent physical and occupational therapy sessions, and the staff was supportive. Oh, and 2 more things. The cafeteria had the best soft serve ice cream flavors ever, plus a popcorn machine. When my kids visited me, we had the most epic junk food picnics. I mean, with 24/7 access to ice cream and fresh popcorn, what else do you need? The rehab center also had TV. I know most of you take this for granted, but I haven't had cable or satellite in my entire adult life.
Oh.
And my rehab stay happened to include both the Summer Olympics and Shark Week. Turns out there are tons of amputees on Shark Week, which made it oddly appropriate. I'm not saying you should plan your amputation around Shark Week, but I'm not saying you shouldn't. On to the cons, meaning convicts, because it can feel that way if you're staying in a place where there are locks on the windows and you can't come and go as you please. I don't know how it is in other cities, but my town isn't huge, so rehab takes place in assisted living centers. I asked around and found out which one was best in my area, because not all assisted living centers are created equal. I heard some alarming stories about some of the centers and opted for the one people seem to like. In the time I spent there, I definitely gained empathy for seniors in assisted living. It's hard to put into words, but it can be depressing there. The patients living in assisted living are struggling, otherwise they'd be home. And while the staff I had was great, there are just so many intense needs that it makes for a draining environment. It's also hard not to be able to come and go or choose what you want to do or even what to make for lunch. Your choices are limited by things like the lunch menu, visitation hours, and what your care team and insurance are on board with. Staff are going to come and check on you based on their schedules, even if that means waking you up earlier than you want after a hard night or taking you to the gym right when you're hoping for a desperately needed nap. You're not in control. I think I got off easy because I was young and just passing through, but I definitely didn't feel free. Like when I wanted to go to the store and buy googly eyes to make a sock puppet for my leg, I couldn't. That's actually a pretty funny story. I should tell you about the googly eyes one day. And though the staff were respectful, I didn't feel like I had complete privacy because of how often people were coming into my room.
Come in.
Hi.
Hello.
Are you still working on your food?
Rehab can also be lonely because you're separated from your home and loved ones. I tried to get to know the seniors living there, but found it surprisingly hard. Many of them had Alzheimer's or other troubles communicating. Though there were plenty of people, it felt lonely. If you know someone in assisted living, I invite you to visit them. I'm sure it would really brighten their day. Moving on, another con is that, like the hospital, there are frequent interruptions that make it hard to rest. Having just had a major surgery, the nurses are supposed to check your vitals, give you meds, get your lunch order, and check up on you throughout the day. Add on physical therapy, and it was so busy that I never managed to get a single nap. Not one. In nearly half a month of rehab. I'm not sure I would have been able to fall asleep while hurting, but I would have liked to at least tried. I was able to streamline some of the interruptions by ordering the entire week's worth of meals all at once, so they didn't need to come ask a dozen times.
That awkward moment when the nurse walks in while you're filming yourself eating. Or talking to yourself. But I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to you. So it's all good.
And I asked if I could get some of my physical therapy sessions at the same time when we needed to check vitals, so I could just swing by the nurse's station on the way to or from the gym. That sort of thing cut back on interruptions, but it's impossible to completely eliminate them.
Knock, knock.
The most obvious con is that rehab is very expensive. How big of an obstacle this is depends on your insurance. Amputation in my hospital stay met my personal deductible, so it didn't make much financial difference to me if I went to rehab, so long as I got out the instant my insurance decided I'd been there long enough. If you stay longer than what your insurance approves, then you can expect to start paying out of pocket, in which case I hope you have deep pockets. My friend's leg was amputated a couple months after mine. We used the same hospital and doctors and the exact same insurance plan through the same employer, yet the insurance refused to pay for her to go to rehab, yet they paid for me. I have no clue why, and I don't think she knew ahead of time that it would be denied. Extra uncertainty is not comforting when facing amputation. Even though I got into rehab, I never knew when the insurance was going to send me packing. I stayed about half a month and didn't have a lot of notice when it was time to go.
Wanted to send me home at the end of the 3-day hospital stay, but my primary care wants me to do some rehab because my overall health has been kind of going downhill. But if you are already skilled at using crutches and getting around on one leg, then they're less inclined to send you to rehab unless there's something else in the mix. Like my primary care wanted me to rehab. So just be aware of that.
With all those pros and cons in mind, why did I opt for rehab? First off, my overall health was declining. I felt so sick and unwell that I was struggling with basic things like getting food down, even before amputation day. The second factor was my home environment. I had 3 kids, one with autism, the other with a brain malformation and special needs, and a 2-year-old. There was no way I was going to get any rest while in the same house with them.
Don't sleep, Mama. Don't sleep.
Did I sleep?
No, don't sleep again.
even with my husband doing his best to help while still trying to work. Speaking of our house, it was not wheelchair friendly. Aside from the ridiculous quantity of stairs, the angle of the hallways prevented my wheelchair from entering most of the rooms. I did a ton of crawling on the ground, which is not especially safe with a freshly amputated limb and kids running around. I was hoping I'd get more rest in a rehabilitation center than I could at home. Ironically, I got no rest. Shall I complain again about the lack of naps? But I did get better help with meals, medical issues, transportation, and so forth. Because instead of one overtired, stressed out husband trying to do everything for everyone all at once, I had a whole team of people meeting my needs. So would I recommend going to a rehabilitation center? I honestly couldn't say. That's something you need to discuss with your doctor. If your health is good aside from your leg, there are no complications, you don't have dependents to care for, your house is fairly accessible, and you have a significant other who can be home with you, that's a very different situation from someone with multiple health problems, kids, and a partner with a difficult work schedule. The quality of the rehab centers in your area is also a significant factor. Every situation is unique, so think it through and talk with people you trust, and keep in mind that insurance might deny the request even if you and your doctor decide it's a good idea. That's it for today. If you're new to amputated life, I have a playlist for new amputees right over here. And if you're struggling, hang in there. Life is intense right after amputation, but things tend to settle down. So take a deep breath, face one day at a time, and I'll see you next time.